Let's talk to Trevor Kavanagh now, political columnist at The Sun. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to ask you about institutions. We're asking today about the NHS, obviously, being accused of protecting a baby killer. OK, they didn't necessarily think she was a baby killer, but babies were dying and the finger was pointed at her, at Lucy Letby, and they did nothing. And yesterday, yet another Met police officer convicted of rape, including a female officer and a 16-year-old girl. Are there any institutions that you still trust, Trevor?
Well, I think that in the last few years, in particular, we've seen the public sector really turning into the blob. It is out of control of the government. Ministers' writ does not run into the upper reaches or even the lower reaches of the various public sector bodies. And we haven't mentioned the CPS and Andrew Malkinson, the alleged rapist who was innocent, serving 17 years.
Very good point, yes.
Or the report over the last few days, which is really depressing indeed, that the Home Office is now a law unto itself that decides how many people are admitted into this country. And it's 70%. Any of the asylum seekers is now 70% compared with 20 or 25 in France. And they have set the rules on which they will be judged. In other words, they will say that we cannot ask asylum seekers why basically they're claiming asylum.
And even when they're proven to be liars, when they say something that can be proven to be untrue, not then saying, right, we now can't trust anything you're saying.
Yes, and I think this is a really serious matter, not just for this present government, but for any government that follows. The only difference is that there is a mild sort of resistance from the Conservatives, but there'll be none from the Labour Party, which will simply allow them to run their own operations. I cannot see the Keir Starmer doing anything more than Rishi Sunak or the Conservatives to stop boats coming here. And they're coming in increasing numbers. And I think that this is a really serious problem when you discover, as we did at the weekend, that two of our biggest cities, London and Birmingham, are now minority white populations. And the rate at which people are arriving in this country, 600,000 legally and tens of thousands illegally, it is totally transforming the face of this country in a way that has had no consultation whatsoever with the British public.
Trevor, I have to say, look, I mean, again, London actually, people forget, London actually is 53 or 54% white. I've really got no interest in what colour someone is. I think it's totally irrelevant. I do have an issue about culture, and I do have an issue about arrivals en masse. So even from any country, whether it's, Australia, Canada, Nigeria, Pakistan or wherever, when people arrive, whether or not people can be integrated into our society. And that is easier when people come from similar cultures with similar values. For instance, have very good English skills, etc., etc. That does make a difference. But the key thing, I mean, Tony Blair onwards, no one ever asked us. And when people did say, I'm not sure this is really a good idea, legal and illegal, at different rates, everyone was just told they were racist and to shut up. And that is still happening now, isn't it? We would be quite happy to have all these channel migrant boat people, 18,000 this year alone. We'd be quite happy to have them. We're told by the usual bleeding hearters, if they were white-skinned, it's because they're brown-skinned that we don't want them here. I don't think that is the case.
I don't think it's the case either. It's the numbers, I think. It's the sheer numbers that are coming, which are transforming society in a way on which we have not been consulted, and many people find they resent. So you can't simply dismiss public opinion in that way. It is
you can. Politicians can do that if there isn't an alternative.
Well, there is an alternative, but frankly, I can't see any government taking the decision to actually stop these boats and returning them to France. We could do that legally. It would be a very difficult thing to do, and it would be resisted by the French, who are perfectly happy to take £500 million each year from us and send them over here. They don't want them back. But if we decided to do what the Australians, for instance, did, which is to put them on safe and unsinkable boats and give them enough fuel to get them back again, they would very rapidly, that system of people smugglers would dry up overnight.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, again, it's perfectly possible to do. We know it's happened elsewhere. Can I ask you about another story very quickly? It's emerged on the front of the Telegraph today that the government did try to block the expansion of the ULEZ zone, the ultra-low emission zone in London. As said City Khan, and next week it's going to rise to basically the whole of the M25. I mean, huge area involving lawful, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions more people. But the government did try to block this, but were told by their own government lawyers, yeah, that's going to be overruled in the courts. What do you make of that?
Well, I think they could easily have found some other lawyers. You'll always find a lawyer who will find a loophole or an objection to anything you raise if you want to. You can also find lawyers who can find ways through those loopholes and booby traps and take the action that the majority of the voters who elected this government want them to take.
Well, we know exactly. So, this is an elected Tory government. Sadiq Khan is elected as mayor, but this policy, we know, and they had a consultation on it. Actually, the vast majority of respondents were opposed to it, and yet he's still going ahead with it.
No, well, who cares about the voters, frankly?
Yeah.
And especially Mayor Khan doesn't care about the voters. It's impossible to understand, frankly, how he's got away with this, because ULEZ is a complete fraud. It is not a fee, it is a fine. The people are being fined for simply owning a car which is older or doesn't follow the guidelines for ULEZ. But it is not. It is just a money-raising fraud.
These things always are. They always are. Trevor Kavanagh, political columnist at The Sun, there, and his cough. I hope you feel better soon, Trevor.